Today, we're diving into the Thomson Reuters 2025 State of Tax Professionals report. And wow, it paints a picture of an industry at a major turning point. We're talking about huge pressures from new tech and a serious talent shortage, but also some incredible opportunities. So let's get right into it.
So what's the one thing that's on every single firm leader's mind? It's this number right here. 44% say improving efficiency is their absolute number one priority. Now, that's been the case for 3 years running, but what's really changing is why everyone is so obsessed with it.
Okay, here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at the big pressures squeezing firms from all sides. Then we'll get into technology, which is kind of this double-edged sword right now, and the frantic search for talent. And then we'll wrap up with the new playbook that smart firms are using to win, from the services they're offering to, how they're actually pricing them. At its heart, this report shows a profession that is just feeling the squeeze. The main problem for every single tax firm out there, whether you're a solo act or a huge corporation, is this intense pressure to not just get more efficient, but to find totally new ways to grow. And they have to do it in a market that is changing faster than ever before.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Yeah, efficiency is still number one, but look at growth. It literally rocketed from 5th place last year all the way to 2nd place. And the report says this is all being driven by one powerful emotion, a deep-seated fear of being left behind.
And this pressure to grow isn't just about revenue. As all the boring, routine tasks get automated away, firms can't just compete on filing taxes anymore. They're having to branch out into strategic advice, into business consulting. They're fighting for a whole new kind of client who wants more than just a 1040. Which, of course, brings us to our next point, technology. It's supposed to be the key that unlocks all this new efficiency and growth, right? Well, yes and no. As the report shows, it's also one of the single biggest roadblocks firms are hitting. This gives us a real reality check. Just look at these numbers. Almost half of all firms have automated a quarter or less of their work. And get this, a full 18% have zero automation. There's this huge gap between the ambition to automate and what's actually happening on the ground. So why is that gap so big? Well, it's not because people don't want to automate. The top two reasons are pretty simple: a lack of time and the crazy high cost. It's that classic chicken and egg problem, right? You need the tech to make more money, but you need more money to afford the tech. But here's the real kicker. Even with all those headaches, the push for better tech is not slowing down. In fact, AI was the only area of tech investment that actually went up this year. Firms know it's not a question of if they adopt it, but when and how. But look, technology is just one piece of the puzzle. You can have the fanciest software in the world, but if you don't have the right people to run it, you're dead in the water. And that brings us to the other massive pressure point, the desperate, ongoing search for skilled talent. When firm leaders were asked what single thing keeps them up at night, the answer was loud and clear. More than a quarter, 26%, said it was hiring and keeping good people. It's the challenge that trumps everything else. And this problem, it's actually getting worse. The number of firms who find recruiting highly challenging jumped from 39% to 45% in just a single year. The pipeline of new talent is shrinking, and the competition for who's left is absolutely brutal. So what are firms doing to get by? Well, one big strategy is just shifting work around. They're taking tasks like admin and bookkeeping and giving them to staff who aren't fully qualified accountants. The goal is super simple: free up your senior, most expensive people to do the high-value work that actually makes money. All of this, the pressure, the tech, the talent shortage, it leads us to the solution. This is the new playbook that the really smart, forward-thinking firms are starting to use. It's a total shift away from just doing compliance work and toward becoming a true strategic advisor. And it turns out clients are practically screaming for this change. A massive 3/4 of them say they strongly desire more business and tax advice from their accountants, not just someone to fill out the forms. The market itself is pulling the profession in this direction. But hold on, there's a catch, right? How can you focus on giving high-level strategic advice when you're also dealing with the number 2 challenge of the industry? Just trying to keep up with the ridiculously complex, always changing tax laws. You can't be a visionary if you're drowning in paperwork. And that's where this idea of compliance management comes in. Think of it like this. You outsource all the nitty-gritty, painful regulatory stuff to experts who live and breathe that world. That frees up your best people to focus on what they do best, actually talking to and advising clients.
So, for example, a firm could team up with a specialized service that handles all the business formation paperwork, acts as a registered agent, or manages ongoing compliance filings. This is exactly the model that companies like Filing Fox provide, letting tax firms offload that headache and focus on a higher-level strategy.
And you can see this shift happening in real time. A whopping 82% of firms are now offering strategic tax advice. That's a huge jump from just 74% last year. It's pretty clear this is the most obvious and effective way for firms to grow and meet that new client demand. Okay, so you're offering all these new advisory services, but how do you charge for them? That brings us to the last piece of this new playbook, finding the right pricing model. What's happening here is that firms are basically throwing out the old playbook. The billable hour isn't king anymore. Sure, it's still around, but firms are rapidly moving to things like flat fee, value-based, and retainer models. It's all about giving clients the predictability and choice that they've been asking for. At the end of the day, this is about way more than just billing. It's about changing the entire conversation with your clients. It's about tying the price to the value of the advice you give, not just the hours you spend. And that's how you build much stronger, more transparent relationships. So, what's the big takeaway from all of this? It's that technology isn't replacing accountants, not by a long shot. What it's doing is freeing them up from the grunt work and elevating their role. The future isn't about data entry. It's about interpretation, strategy, and human-to-human advice. And that leaves us with a really powerful question to think about. In a world where AI can do all the math faster and more accurately than any person ever could, what's the real, irreplaceable value of the human professional? The answer, it seems, isn't in the numbers themselves, but in the wisdom we can pull from them.